Oh,
All right, I just got back.
okay. Hey, everybody, what's going on? Welcome to another edition of God Talk. And today we're going to be talking about consumerism and the 10th commandment. And we have a great panel here today of various beliefs and viewpoints. And so I want to welcome Lyrics and Nate, Pyong, Reuven, and Roy. Thanks for coming today. Um, so, yeah, consumerism and the 10th commandment. I was looking at the 10th commandment today, and if you got your Bibles, open up to Exodus 20:17, and it says, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's." Um, And the definition I have here for consumerism is the belief that it is good for people to spend a lot of money on goods and services. The actions of people who spend a lot of money on goods and services. Let's see. And the theory that an increasing consumption of goods is economically desirable. A preoccupation with an inclination toward the buying of consumer goods. um, the Hebrew word for covet, and forgive me if I pronounce it wrong. Is it kamad? A kamad? Reuven will probably correct me on that. Um, Means to desire, take pleasure in. Also has, in a bad sense, of inordinate, ungoverned, selfish desire. Um, so that would be for the word covet from what I get from my Strong's Concordance. So I guess what I wanted to discuss today, um, do believers, non-believers as well, I guess, fall in this trap of coveting with our current environment of consumerism and our current uh, encouragement to consume, especially here in America, where most of our economy is based on the consumption of goods and services. So when does it get good? When's it good? When's it bad? When does it get ugly? Anyone care to chime in?
Yeah, I guess first from a Christian perspective, that's not a commandment for you. That being said, I do think there's great wisdom in there. So yeah, and for a Christian believer, I think that yeah, there's a lot of wisdom to be found in the Old Testament. Keeping in mind this is for specific people and their governing laws. So as far as believer in Christ, not for you, but there is still good wisdom. So this covenant seems to imply, wanting something of someone else, something that someone else has that you're not going to get in like a good moral way, that you're going to have to do some like deceiving or underhanded tactics to end up getting what they have. So I don't even think I'm anxious to hear Reuben's position, but I don't even think for the people whose laws these are, the observant Jewish people, that this conflicts, because what we just read, it always refers to the neighbor, seeming like something that someone else that has something that you want, not necessarily in terms of I can go to the mall and buy something that someone else is making to be bought. But yes, for Christians, non-applicable. Knock yourself out. But heed the wisdom there.
Okay, anyone else care to make a comment? Okay.
Yeah,
Well, let me. Oh, go ahead, Roy. Go ahead.
I'll agree with what Nate said. I totally agree with the perspective he put out there, and uh, I looked up coveting, and one of the definitions is coveting is an immoral longing for something that is not rightfully yours. So it's more of a mindset than it is anything else. It's relational as well. And so, as far as my relationship with God, when I have a longing or a wrongful desire for something, then it could eat at me so much that, well, it's going to destroy my relationship with God. Not to the point of I don't have one, but I like the one-liner that says, when you feel far from God, guess who moved? So it's going to destroy or deaden a lot of our relationship uh, with the Lord as well as with other people. And so, yeah, that's why we're commanded as well, not Christians, but Old Testament believers, to not do that. And like Nate says, while we're not under the law, it's good wisdom. I mean, we're going to do this naturally. I'm not going to covet my neighbor's wife or his, tools, so to speak, tangible, intangible stuff, just because, they're not attainable. I'll just leave it right there for right now.
Okay. Um, Pyong or Lyrical, you want to add anything?
Yeah, well, thinking about the plain meaning of the topic of the hangout today, which is not talking about maybe some kind of parsing differences in the word covet. What I was thinking about was that it could be potentially good to prevent people from coveting stuff, consumerism generally. Because, first of all, I think for my sake, I need to reconcile this economic characteristic of consumerism with this more very subjective idea that is put forth in the Bible, So I'm looking at where consumer is contemporaneous to my experience. And what I see is potentially a situation where it does reduce the amount of harmful behavior that might arise from covetousness. Because if I can buy something that is equivalent to a good that I see my neighbor has, that is cheap, that is readily accessible, I'm not going to be so inclined to perhaps steal his, or to kill his and to take his. Now, that doesn't apply, of course, to his maidservant, but that does apply to his ass.
I think most of my experience with coveting has to do with people, with their the way that they handle themselves, the way that they can have an inner peace, the way that they can deal with life correctly. A lot of times I will covet a certain personality type and try to, I wouldn't say emulate it, but try to get some information from that personality type that I kind of incorporate into my own. As far as consumerism, I've never been one of those types that converts or covets people's things, wives, money, anything like that. I never really got into the game, so. But I do have things that I enjoy. I have a computer, I have guitars, I have a bed, things like this. Functionality. Why does my kid always talk when I'm getting ready to do this? Hold on, I'll be right
Welcome to
back.
my world.
It's okay. Yeah, I wouldn't say that consumerism. I'm getting an echo again. Is that lyrics? Oh, okay. I wouldn't say consumerism in itself is bad, um, good or bad. What I would say is the excess in consuming. I guess coveting seems to be encouraged. I mean, if you were bombarded advertising, marketing, buy this car and you'll be happy, or have this house, these desires are totally, put in front of us all the time. And I think it encourages a sort of coveting, and to the point where people will go consume these things, thinking it will fulfill their life, give more meaning, make them happier, even to go into debt to do these things. At that point, I think is where uh, consumerism becomes a bad thing.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Now I know Nate and Roy, you were saying about how okay, these things are like in the Old Testament, it's the Ten Commandments. But a thing that came up in my mind was the scripture Jesus was saying how even if you had anger with your brother, you murdered him in your heart, or if you looked at a woman, lusted after, you committed adultery. And though he doesn't say it, I guess the implication there is if hey, you like someone else's stuff, you don't want their stuff, you're kind of stealing in your heart too. So would this not kind of fall under that a little bit as well? The 10th commandment under that verse?
You know what? Give me a second. I gotta go check on my kid now. Be right back.
Sure. Everybody with their kid issues today.
Daddy Day.
Well, I'm an empty nester, so I'll answer. I was going to let Nate go, but
Go ahead.
so while it is not explicitly so said, as I said earlier, it is a mindset thing. So it has to do with the mind. If in your mind, because that's where all of our thoughts go. I believe that a thought starts in your heart, and it develops in the mind. The mind is what determines whether or not that thought is something that we need to act upon or not. So if your mind has the right, mindset, then the heart set will eventually follow. Because if your heart is still bent on evil, then the mind, with its renewing, right, will then determine, maybe coveting my neighbor's this or that might not be such a good thing because, and then if we look at the consequences behind it, So if you stop and think long, because no one actually doesn't think before they act. If someone says, I didn't think before acting, well, that's not true. There's no way you can act without thinking. You just didn't think long enough, and you didn't think about the consequences. So is it equated to stealing? That's a tough one. Personally, as a Christian, since the Bible is silent, I have to be silent, but the mindset is there, so be careful with, you could equate it, but I don't equate it because the Bible is silent, so I will be too. Nate, if you're back, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can trace this, and this is how I think it's not cherry picking; it's taking the totality. Because if you take the totality of everything, you get how these 10 commandments weren't for Christians ever. Then, if you look at the narrative of the life of Christ, you see how these commandments are not for those who believe in Christ. They are still in line with what we feel are good and moral and the right thing to do. Therefore, we're not held to some punishment if we violate these. But generally, we live our lives consistent with these because we recognize they're simply the right things to be doing. And then when Jesus, I believe, what you spoke about, I know I'm going to be disagreed with, but from my Christian perspective, I believe that, Jesus is really elevating this law, saying, look, this is what you've been doing. This is what you should be doing. This is what I'm telling you, that even though you think, these things you're doing are fine, it's so much more than that. It's so much more difficult, in fact, that you can't do it. So, and then, if you keep reading, you get to the part where, he's asked, what is the greatest commandment? What's the greatest thing you can do? And Jesus says, love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. And he says, also combining, he didn't come to abolish any law, but make sure every jot and tittle is fulfilled, right? And then, he says, love God and love people. If you do this, this sums up all the laws and all the prophets. Even the stuff that wasn't given for us anyway. Everything that God wants us to do is still summed up if we truly grasp and love God and love people. So, anyway, that's my thought.
I'm just gonna for our listening audience, just read Reuben's last comment. It said, if you look at your neighbor's Mercedes and think to yourself that it should belong to you or that you should take it from him, that is coveting. However, if you say, that is a nice car, I should get one for myself and go purchase another Mercedes, then it is not coveting. And I think I would tend to agree with that.
Yeah, me too, just scholastically speaking.
Well, how coveting is the basis of competition in our society, right? We see this one guy's Mercedes, and we're like, that looks pretty nice, so I need to further myself, work, get the green, so to say, to acquire these goods. How do we live in society nowadays without at least a little kind of coveting to further our ambitions, just as a person, Don't you think a little healthy coveting is acceptable?
No.
I think healthy coveting would not be coveting. I really like what Reuben said. I like what Reuben said. I agree with that.
So yeah, to take off
nice car, I want that. I'm going to go buy one. Great. If you're like, that's a nice car, I'm going to burn the guy's house down and take it. That's bad.
Right, and I would go one step further with what Reuben said, which is, hey, coveting is I see my neighbor's got a Mercedes, nice car, I want that puppy, and I want yours. Not coveting would be to say, you know what, I'll go get one of my own. The thing I would like to add to that is why you want one of your own. Is it
Yes.
because you want to keep up with the Joneses, your neighbor, and going like, man, I got to give me one too because he's like showing me up. So be
Right.
careful. Again, it's mindset.
Yes, it would be. Yeah, I would agree there. It's your intention, and no one's gonna really know the intent of your heart except for you. Um, yeah, there's this thought too in Buddhist thought about how most suffering comes from our attachments, our desires like this, that things outside of us, or that we need these things to, give us fulfillment. I think, yeah, that's where the suffering comes in. That's
Well,
having this covetous statement.
could
Okay.
you repeat the, I guess, initial topic for Gav, like consumerism versus that? I'm interested to hear his thought.
Yes. Hi, Gab, by the way. Yeah, consumerism and the 10th commandment. And so we were, stating the 10th commandment and also what consumerism is, kind of the encouragement to consume goods and services. That's a good thing here for the economy. So that sometimes can the abuse of consuming or be a breaking of the commandment? These kind of things. Uh,
Uh, that's kind of a loaded question.
okay.
Um, sorry, my audio is a little screwed up. See if I can fix it there. Is that
Yeah,
better?
getting like. Oh, go ahead and I'll let you know.
Okay, how am I
Getting a
now?
little echo though from somebody. Getting echo. Might be okay. It's Nate.
Alright.
Yeah. Thanks, Nate. Go ahead, Gav.
I think consumerism is largely a product of the era we live in. I think in times past, people didn't have the discretionary income or the time to really go out and buy frivolous things. The little money you made or the little bartering you did was basically for your own continued existence. I really don't think your average farmer in ancient Greece really cared about so much about what his neighbor had, just as long as he could feed his own family. So I think it's really you're applying a I'm sorry, I'm kind of loopy. um, you're trying to apply a very ancient morality here to a very modern set of circumstances where people are always, oh, I have to have this car, I have to add a floor onto my house, and I think it's as far as what's wrong and what's right, I think you have to get into very specific subsets of consumerism as far as applying any type of morality to it. I don't think you can place a blanket yes, no, or good, bad on it.
Hmm. And yeah, you do have some. Thanks, Gav. Yeah, you do have some kind of noise. It's like scratching a chalkboard a little bit.
Huh.
That's a little bit.
Yeah, it sounded like a squeaky hamster wheel. You might want to DW for it. No, I'm just kidding. Hi, Gav.
Put some oil on that thing. So lyrics or accent. Do fiat-based systems need consumerism?
Yeah, back in ancient times and Roman times, most of the money was coined. There was a form of fiat, but that was later on. But like, if we had the silver gold standard now, I think that the need of consumerism wouldn't be as high as it would with fiat-based currency and debt-based currency and stuff, especially when the government can inflate and deflate the money supply at will. Um, it seems that coveting is needed in the American economy for it to function. We don't really have a surplus of uh, building things, having a sector to manufacture things. We kind of lost that, and now it's more of a consumer-based fun and pleasure economy now. And that's kind of out of our control. But you can see with the mass population, for the most part, that they're more worried about their iPhone than they are worried about like other things. So I think it's really bad to say, but I think in our particular economic times that we need consumerism in order to survive at this particular point. Maybe not in the future, but it seems like it's incorporated into it, you know.
For sure.
It's definitely a bad thing. Like I don't agree with it, you know what I mean? But like it almost seems that without coveting now in the 21st century American economy, it would go under hardcore.
Yeah, and do some of us covered more than we care to admit? Um, maybe even the slightest sense, even in a passing thought. You know. Um, Here's a question for some of you, and I know we're all different age groups, and Roy, you might be able to kind of relate to where I'm coming from since we're around the same age. I find that the older I get, I mean, I found that as far as coveting and these desires and stuff were a lot higher when I was younger, you know, 20s, stuff like that. But it seems like, I guess, with age and maturity, you find that the simpler things is all you need, and you can be content, more content. It might not be the case for everybody, but that's what I'm finding it as I get older, or maybe it's just how I'm, maturing spiritually, or maybe it's just that part as well. I don't know if the age has anything to do with it, but that's what I'm finding for myself.
Yeah, I think it's just when you're young, it's like, ooh, I've never experienced this before. Wonder what this is like. So you experience it and you go, oh, the thought of it was way more exciting than the actuality of it. And so we kind of discard that and we pick and choose to see. Do you see what I'm saying? And so
Hmm.
yeah, age has something to do with it, obviously, because that's experience. With age comes experience. So it's never what you think it's going to be, especially if it's something that you've totally given more expectation to than it can deliver. So if you're that type of individual, then I think, yeah, you're going to go, yeah, it's probably one of those things again. So you're not going to desire it as much or what have you because you've been let down so many times. Anyway, by the way, John, how old are you? Or
I'm
what age?
40. I'm 40.
Okay. I didn't know that. I thought you were in your 30s, but yeah, I don't
Oh,
know why
thank
I
you very
thought that.
much. All right. Yeah, I'm 30. Um, I'm 39 for the rest of my life. uh, Anyone else care or comment on what was just said? Is Saka, welcome Saka.
I mean, I'm compared to 40 and the other age is I'm relatively young. I'll be 26 next month. Um, and I actually agree. I live pretty modestly and pretty simply with my family, and I kind of take a lot of pleasure just from that. I really don't feel the need to have the latest gadget or a new car. I mean, a new car. My car is 1998. I'm not looking to impress anybody with a Ford Escort with 240,000 miles on it.
Hmm. I have a saying. Uh, the grass may look greener on the other side, but it still has to be mowed
And watered.
and well, yeah,
You'll kill it
maintained.
if you don't water it, guys. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And to add to what you were saying before, Roy. Yeah, I mean, how is it? Things. Yeah, we desire stuff, right? And then, oh, it'd be so nice to have that, and then you have it, and it's like a couple weeks later, the novelty, kind of wears off, as far as things and relationships. I mean, I've gotten, you know, I've gotten into a couple of bad relationships only because of a desire, a lust. You think, oh, if I only had her, the world would be perfect. Only to find no, there's a lot of troubles attached to that. You know?
John, I found out you need to look in the trunk of said persons because you might find some junk in that trunk. You know what I'm saying? Everybody comes with sort of assorted baggage, but yeah, I totally would agree with that. It's never what it appears to be on the outward, on the outside. You know.
Hmm.
So
There's,
having a pure heart and having pure desires for why you want a thing, because yeah, that I think that makes all the difference in the world. Over time, I've discovered that the hard way.
there's a really funny line from a movie called The Killer Elite, and this one they're talking about women and girls, and the guy says, "Well, you show me a beautiful girl, and I'll show you 20 guys that are sick of her shit." I thought that was funny. So,
That is funny. Yeah. Well, welcome, Sokka.
Hey,
How you doing?
good. Can't complain.
Did you hear anything that was going that we were talking about before you came in, or?
No, I'm pretty lost.
Okay.
So
Well, we'll
what's the
talk.
hole? What's the hole that coveting fills up?
What's the
Isn't
whole
that
that?
what we're talking about? Like coveting's bad, because it
Mhm.
takes you outside of yourself and it places you somewhere that gives something that gives you satisfaction that you wouldn't ordinarily have. So like, isn't that the ultimate goal of coveting? Is to just fill up your dead soul?
Well, I mean, it all depends. Like, well, I mean, covet when you covet something. I mean, are we talking about this just in the negative sense, or like, do you guys acknowledge that there could be a positive sense?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I did mention that actually.
You're saying there's a positive aspect to coveting?
Yeah, absolutely.
Lyrics might said something to that effect as well.
I'd love to hear that because in my mind and from my perspective, there is no positive. But if I can be perspecticized, I'm in.
Well, I will go back to the. I mean, huh, uh, going back to the commandment, that word covet, and from what I saw in the concordance, the word is CHAMAD. Maybe Gav could give us the proper pronunciation there. Is it kamad? I don't know, but it says to desire, take pleasure in. Now, on the face there, yeah, it could be good or bad, right? I go further in the definition. It says in a bad sense, it's of being ungoverned, selfish desire. But when we look at the 10th commandment, it seems like, when it's saying not to do something, it's usually because it's a bad thing to do or it's going to be bad for you.
Well,
Sokka,
how
did you?
so? I mean,
Yeah,
like,
go ahead.
with the I'm a little off right now, so you have to excuse me.
It's okay.
The coveted neighbor's wife, his home, his ass, all those. So what other specific ones are there?
It says, it's Exodus 20:17. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. So you should not take a desire or a pleasure in any of those things.
So, Saka, would you agree with the definition I put up? Coveting is an immoral longing for something that is not rightfully yours.
I mean, rightfully yours. It's a rightful claim on anything.
Like
If
the commandment says.
my neighbor, okay, my neighbor has a really nice car, it's just like, oh wow, that's a really great car. If I was to covet that car and be like, hey, I really want that car, I really want to have his particular car, okay, that's fine, that could be coveting there. But if I see his car and be like, wow, that's a really nice car, I really want a car just like that, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get a car identical to his car. Now, I'm not coveting his car. I'm coveting, I'm using that as a drive to desire something that I want. So is that okay?
Yeah, but see,
Right.
that wouldn't be a
That's
coveting.
exactly what
Coveting
Lyrics
is
of
an
Dust
immoral
mentioned
longing
about
for
coveting
something that
being
you
like a
can't have.
motivator to
Hold on.
productive activity.
Hold
Yeah, I
on,
mean,
one at a time here.
like
Okay.
coveting someone's possessions is fine. Yeah, or sorry, so coveting something that specifically belongs to somebody else. I mean, his wife would be a good example. You know what? I really want his wife particular, not just a wife like his. I want his wife. Yeah, that could be bad, obviously. But if it's more like, okay, I really want to have a wife like that. That they have such a great relationship. I really want a relationship like that. Is that good?
Yeah, but that's not coveting though, right? So we're beyond the coveting now.
Well, that's why I'm trying to clarify. What do we mean by
Right.
covet?
So earlier you were saying that there's a good side to coveting, and I said, well, I don't see one in my mind's eye, but if you have one, I'd love to see it. So, yeah,
But
this would take it out of the perspective of coveting, and it would be just a rightful desire because you're seeing that person as a role model, maybe, and it's like you find out why they have this particular wife or why they have this particular maid or manservant or these particular animals or make it today's vernacular, whatever they have. It's like, wow, how come you have that type of PC as opposed to whatever? You know what I'm saying? Or
okay, but let's do the thought experiments. Fun stuff there too. Okay, you know, you and the girl, friends since childhood, grew up in the same town, whatever, great. Grow up, your neighbors, whatever. She marries some dickhead, treats her like shit. You know she abuses that he abuses her. You know that it's not a healthy relationship. Now, he doesn't do anything illegal or anything there, but doesn't treat her right. And you still really like her. You still really love her. And you feel that there might be some feelings back there as well. That you want to make this woman's life that you've known for your entire life better than what she has now.
Hmm.
So if you covet that, if you covet her, if your goal in coveting that is to, not just make your life better there, but also make her life better, yeah, that's so immoral.
I think all you did was just put a Y
I
in
put a
front of
motivation,
the covet.
but you see, and this you're right, and without having to go too far into the whole, morality talk. The problem with the absolute rules, is that there's no context that could be taken. Thou shalt not kill. Okay, great. Killing is never right. What about in self-defense? Someone's breaking into your house. You know that they have, good cause. You have good cause to believe that they're about to hurt you. Can you jump out of the dark and kill them? To stop them from going off and murdering your family. What happens if that wasn't even your intention? You just wanted to stop them. Whatever, and in the process, you push them down some stairs. The thing is that. Was that against the "Thou shalt not kill" commandment? Absolutely. But was it immoral? And see, that's what I say was when you just write out the basic laws, and this is the reason why we have a justice system to differentiate between things like the motivators, the reasons why a crime is committed in a certain way, that you can get that context. And so just to have these base rules without allowing for the option of context makes them terrible, really.
Well, I totally agree with you, Sak. I totally agree with you. So going with your particular scenario, these are mindset and heart set type of laws, if you will, because who can say whether you're coveting or not but you? So to take your scenario and put myself in that and say, yes, I would want to help this woman see the light of day in every chance I get. And so I could possibly persuade her to see that light of day without coveting her, right? So if I just want the best for her and let her know that, hey, she can do better, and if I just happen to be one of the better choices without, you know what I'm trying to say here, without coveting, then I think it's perfectly okay and perfectly moral.
But if you weren't coveting the possibility of being the recipient of her affection, what is your motivation to do it then?
I think the issue here, Roy, is your nesting of the word immoral in your definition of coveting.
Okay, help me out.
Well, I mean, when I think of coveting, I think of maybe a desire to possess something, or a desire to own something, a desire to incur some kind of property interest in something.
Yeah, but if you take the
And
10th
now you're
commandment,
talking
though,
about, now when you wrote your definition in the side chat, and I'll just read it for the people who can't see it. Coveting is an immoral longing for something that is not rightfully yours. If I were to take that and modify it and make it correct to my mind, I would strike the immoral and I would strike something that is not rightfully yours. And so, and you know, when Sokka made that distinction about the thing that he talked about the wife. Now, I take exception to that because I think talking about possessing a woman is anachronistic. But I agree with what he was saying.
And that goes along the line with what Reuven was saying earlier. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think we can all come to an agreement that the desire of taking someone else's property or woman would be the wrong thing to do here, as opposed to, oh, okay, maybe it'd be a motivator to, get your own, a car that's like that, you know, or a woman that is like that, but to have to want to take and have that desire to take your neighbor's stuff uh, would be wrong.
well, let me be quick to say that we don't even have to go as far as actually doing the taking. This is the coveting that is talked about in the 10th commandment is actually just the mindset, just the longing and the desiring of having something that you can't have because it doesn't belong to you. That's immoral.
That is, and that is a great point. I mean, it turns into the thought crime type thing, where that the issue itself now is not just the coveting of something else. You can want something, you can desire something, but when you by the way that especially in the Ten Commandments as it's laid out, it seems more along the lines of the thought crime of saying, I really want to steal that. I really want to take something that does not belong to me, and I can understand that. And I can, well, it's really hard to build any type of legal system off of what people think. Obviously, the idea that the law itself, or like the rules as laid out in the Ten Commandments, is purely about a thought crime, about the thought of stealing something. So if I again, by that definition, if I look at my neighbor and he's got a really great car, I could be envious of him. I could think about how much I want that car and know that it's completely out of reach of mine. But as long as the thought doesn't cross my mind that, what, if I was to go over there, knock him over the back of the head, just knock him unconscious, take his keys, hide it in my garage for a little while, maybe move out of the state, I could have that car, whatever. As long as you don't get to that point, it's not coveting. Being envious and really wanting something, desiring something greatly, is not coveting unless that motivation of, hey, I really want to steal that occurs.
That's one to ask the Jew, right? Because
ask the Jew.
Ask the Jew. Ask the Jew. That's a good point, though, because as far as I understand, Jesus said, as far as you put it, thought crimes. I wouldn't quite word it that way. I don't know how I would word it other than thought good, thought bad, thought moral, thought immoral. So any immoral thoughts like coveting your wife and lust, or coveting your neighbor's wife and lusting after her, or even coveting your, no, that might not be a good example. Forget that. So let's just use the wife as pertained in the 10th commandment. So just having that desire for her, if it's a commandment, don't do that, and you do that, then it's a sin, right?
Yeah, but
I mean,
again,
I'm asking.
yeah, I know that's a problem. See,
I am asking, but
Sorry.
we'd have to ask a Jew.
Do you have control over that, Roy? Do you have control over your thoughts? Like, if, just say that I was put in a situation where I saw my neighbor's wife and I had a feeling of lust towards her, I don't have real control over that. I have control over my actions and how I handle the situation. But ultimately, how can I judge myself for a natural reaction to an attractive woman?
Well, that's where we differ, is because we do have control. You can't keep, It's one thing to say, "Wow, what a beautiful woman." It's another thing to say, "Wow, what a beautiful woman," and then you have second and third and fourth thoughts. So it's not the first thought; it's the second thought and beyond. Man, I would love to bed her tonight and every night. That's what
It's
makes
kind
that
of
thought immoral.
feeding the thought. We have control of, right? Dwelling on that thought. Even,
Exactly.
even
You can capture your thoughts. That's why I think it's the second thought where Jesus says, to lust after a woman. I don't think you lust at first sight, but maybe some people do. I don't know. That would be a discussion for another day, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe now. I don't know.
Just for the record, that the thought of, hey, that's a beautiful woman, to the transitioning to that lustful thought thing, for me, they occur within at least 0.3 seconds of each other.
And Saka, you've timed this, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, like,
Can I use your nanosecond meter?
I mean, I think they almost go hand in hand. It was just like, it's like one of those things where it's just like attraction. Oh, there we are. But I mean, like, it's not bad. I mean, like, here's the thing too, is that this doesn't drive me. It doesn't drive my thoughts. If I see some beautiful woman, like standing at the bus stop or something like that, I'm driving by, I might take a look and be like, wow, type thing. Thoughts go crazy. By the next red light, it's gone, and I've completely forgot what she looked like. I mean, that thought is not like some huge driving factor that's eating away at my soul, or anything like that. It might be nothing more than just a quick moment.
Right, and I totally agree with that. And again, I would hasten to say that we need to capture our thoughts, and the way you do that is you starve your thoughts. If you feed your thought, it's going to grow. If you starve that thought, it's going to die. And
Yeah.
we can do that. As human beings, we can do that. And if you'd like to take my thought capturing 101 class, yes, I am taking enrollment.
Reuven said something interesting over in the comments, if I could interject just a moment. He said, the thought crimes of Jesus are not something any Jew has taught. You have to commit the act to be considered guilty of the act. For example, the definition of adultery in the Bible is a married woman having sex with a man who is not her husband. In other words, what Bill Clinton did was not adultery. There's an entirely different term for that. And steering away a little bit from the semantics at the end, I totally agree with that, and that brought something to mind with what Saka was saying and what Roy was talking about as well. That thoughts alone are not culpable. I mean, there is no modern legal system where thoughts alone are culpable. But that led me to believe, and thoughts leading to other thoughts, I also can't be culpable. But maybe thoughts that lead to behavior, and that's what they were trying to maybe cut off. Thoughts that lead to a particular behavior. And I was just thinking, that in and of itself could be like a preventive rule of thumb, maybe, that was distributed through folklore, and perhaps it's a holdover rule from a society with little or no enforcement. I don't know. That just occurred to me.
I would quickly add to that: are thoughts only of the silent kind, or can you have a thought that you actually say out loud? Because the term thinking out loud, if somebody hears your thoughts as you're saying them, man, I really want to kill my wife. I've thought about it, and oops, you heard me? Oh, sorry,
Right,
that was
Roy.
supposed to be
Yeah.
a silent thought.
No,
So
I totally
perhaps-
get what you're
Get out
saying.
there.
Perhaps maybe then it shouldn't have been thou shalt not, but maybe you should not, or it wouldn't be beneficial to.
I've got a preference where I'd rather you didn't.
Yeah.
Roy,
I like. Oh man, if it was actually written out like that, that'd be great.
Can you imagine God said that?
Roy, specifically what I was talking about is, I think in legal terms, the Latin is mens rea and actus reus. And most crimes in the United States require both of those, which is the culpable mind and the culpable act. So that's specifically what I was talking about.
Right, and I was just throwing that out on the table, to conspire. I mean, if two or three people are just having thoughts, like I love brain dumping. These are just thoughts that I put on the table, and my friends look at them, my colleagues look at them, and then we do something with them or not. And so when you said what you were saying, I just thought, oh, are thoughts only of the silent kind, or are they also of the I heard your thought kind? You know what I'm saying? Is it any different on the thought, whether you speak it silently in your own head or whether you verbalize it out loud?
Well, there can be involuntary, say like a coveting of your wife, or your neighbor's wife or something like that. You could have a situation where you have no intention whatsoever of pursuing a thought, but your body language, the way that you present yourself when that said individual is, you puff up your chest, inadvertently, but you don't want to, like, you don't say anything. Those kind of actions. Would you think something like that would be an inappropriate use of coveting, Roy?
Yeah. Now that you're saying it, I'm in. Yes, because you can kind of read that, right? I mean, I'm an old guy, right? I'm 57, so I know when someone's kind of sort of like thinking these types of thoughts, the way their body movement goes, not only with my own wife, but other women that are other people's wives that I've seen other people kind of, what they're doing is basically immoral in thought. So I love that. I love that.
Do you think that there's like a certain uncontrollability about it that some people have, maybe?
It's not uncontrolled. It's again, I like I say, I'll say this often. You need to capture your thoughts. If you know what a thought is, that's a good thought, a bad thought, and you know what can happen when you dwell on a thought too long. If you feed that thought long enough, it's probably going to happen. If I think long and hard about that dessert that I know I shouldn't have because it's going to put on, a few ounces or pounds, I could care less, right? But if you can't do it because it's going to be health-wise, it's going to be unhealthy for you to do something, then dwelling upon that extra food or whatever, or that thing that you shouldn't be doing, or that extra, alcoholic beverage that you shouldn't be having, what have you, yeah. I do think it's controllable, so you need to capture your thoughts.
But again, I just want to point out, though, where we're moving off the territory of the specific things we're told not to covet, and now we're relating it to other things. So, are you saying that that is it only immoral to to want those certain things that are just specifically mentioned, or
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
gonna?
You're right. It's way off the mark. So, yeah, we have to stick to the 10th commandment. That's what John said. It's the 10th commandment and consumerism, and I thought it was a great topic to start with. I didn't even know exactly where it was going. I've never engaged in such a discussion. But yeah, John, why don't you direct us back to what you had in mind? So feed us some thoughts so that we can dwell on that instead, because I think we're a little off the mark.
Yeah, sure, no problem. First, I'll say that anyone, I think that we have two lone viewers there watching us. If you want to join the conversation, the link is in the event page now for anyone who wants to come in. If anyone here also wants to invite anybody in, you could do so. But yeah, I mean, pretty much how is consumerism and the commandment kind of go hand in hand? Is one encouraging the other kind of deal? Are we guilty to it to some extent? Does consumerism encourage coveting? Which I dare say, yeah, it probably does. How we're bombarded with marketing and advertisements and stuff like that. And, we're kind of told, by mass media and magazine ads of what exactly you need to be happy and stuff and feel fulfilled, and so yeah, I mean, that was where I was kind of going with this conversation. And sometimes that Ten Commandment, maybe especially for the person of who is religious, for the Christian or the Jew, that these kind of things are it's kind of forgotten about, because because of the society we're in, especially in the West, in America and stuff like that. If that makes any sense.
Well, I'll speak up because when I first saw the topic, I was disconnected, but I figured, it's John. He'll connect me. because you're a good guy. I like what you think. I like how you think. We don't always agree, but I know you know a lot. So I thought, yeah, I'm in. I'll tackle this topic, so to speak. So based on what I've already heard and where we've already taken the conversation, so consumerism and coveting, like what Reuben first said in the very beginning, it's one thing to want your neighbor's car, but if you want a car like your neighbor because you've experienced it with them, you've been you've gone on an outing with them and you really love it, it's like it's not coveting anymore because you don't want your neighbor's car. You want a car like your neighbor. So that's just marketing. That's just word of mouth marketing, word of mouth whatever, because we all do it. If we love a movie, if we love a particular eatery, restaurant, what have you, we tell all our friends. And it's called word of mouth, right? We love doing that kind of stuff. So that's going to happen regardless. But if the initial coveting of your neighbor's stuff, as the 10th commandment says, is the reason for increased consumerism, then I would say absolutely. Absolutely it is. And that specific brand or that specific kind, even if you find out that your neighbor got his wife from, like, say, eHarmony or, Match.com or whatever, it's like that's consuming, right?
Would you say, Roy, that and some of these prosperity preachers kind of encourage coveting? Would you say that?
Personally, in a word, no,
Okay.
generally speaking. But if I knew who you were talking about specifically and I had an opportunity to talk with them and, do my best to understand their heart, even so far as asking them what's in your heart and why are you teaching this and would this be part of your message to invoke people to covet, then generally speaking I would just say no in a word. But I'm sure that within certain individuals that might be the case, but it's not generally speaking the case in my humble opinion.
Right.
Lyrics, you got a good question. Do you think people will covet without advertising? Do you want to answer that, or are you asking
Do,
us?
do you
What's
think
your
that,
answer?
Roy? Do you think that you create the coveting, or other people force the coveting upon you? Do you think
Ooh,
you think without advertising that we could control our urge to covet, or do you think it's just so in our face all the time that it's like that's what causes it? You know what I mean?
well, here's, that's a good question. That's a really good question. So, would I covet something that I didn't know was in the world? Let me think. No. So the mere fact that I was advertised to and now made aware of a product or service that I didn't know existed, I wouldn't have been able to covet it had I not known it existed. But then again, are we doing what we talked about earlier and going beyond the 10th commandment? Because the 10th commandment seems to be not stuff that's in the store, but stuff that's in your neighbor's house or household. Yeah, John, would that be accurate?
Yeah, I
Do
wouldn't.
you think
Yeah,
that was
I don't think there
yeah.
was much advertising going on back then, but
Well, we don't know. Bathsheba, I don't know if Bathsheba was advertising or not, but I tell you what, David sure bought.
Well, do you think there's been an increase in coveting this century due to consumerism? A lot of mass market advertising and stuff.
Yeah, in the text of which you're asking, it's not necessarily coveting your neighbor's stuff per se, because you want his stuff. Um, but if we're generally speaking, then yeah, the more you know that's out there, the more you have to desire. Let me just use that word instead of the word covet. It's like if we only knew that there was one brand of peanut butter as opposed to like 28, then you see what I'm saying? Or if we even knew peanut butter existed.
yeah, we're getting a lot of more input now than we have back then. But I think it still comes down to just the human condition, the heart.
The more you know, the more you covet might be a good a
He's
good
done.
a good way to
Yeah.
say it. Yeah, I would agree with that. The more you know, the more you covet. Yeah.
So ignorance is bliss.
Wouldn't go that far, but ignorance is ignorance. I'd go that far. If you know me, you know I love saying you don't know what you don't know. So sometimes that is a good thing.
Just like Donnie Rumsfeld. Sometimes I think about consumerism during this conversation anyway, that it could be like an equalizer. I think about how could consumerism be good. And you have inequalities in society, but consumerism, at least at certain levels. Of course, you're not going to have, people who are middle income like me and buying yachts or something like that. But everybody who is within that income bracket is equalized. And it doesn't matter what your race is. It doesn't matter what your creed is. It doesn't matter what your gender is, unfortunately, as that's something that still affects us, I think. But so I think it could be good as an equalizer. But also I was thinking, I recently, and I didn't go into debt for this, but I recently have been excited about buying this new video game. And it has really brought me happiness. I mean, I'm waiting for it to come out. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm like a little kid waiting for my birthday. And that is in no small measure due to the shaping of preferences in the generation of hype that could be associated with this advertising or something. So I look at that happiness that I've received just waiting for something as good. But how does that square with coveting being prima facie immoral in the Bible?
See, and that's I don't see how it could. I don't see how that act could be immoral at all. Why? Because it's just I mean, here's
I agree.
Just to go with that example here, Roy. You've told really briefly. Tell us your born again story with your friend.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Hey, thanks for remembering. I'm reading into that, Saka, and I won't go any deeper than that. Maybe another day.
Right.
But so basically, my 30th year on this planet. My friend, my good friend, my best friend of 10 years says to me, we were just shooting the breeze. He says, out of the blue, hey, Roy, you must be born again. And I said, what? What's that? He explained it to me, and I said, I'm in. It's really that simple, and that's, So, yeah, that was it, unless you want to ask me something else. I don't know exactly where you wanted me to go with that, but that's the basics.
That's it. You're presented with something. You're presented with this idea, and you wanted it right away. No hesitation. You didn't think about it. I mean, you did whatever you could so you could obtain that idea. And it's the same thing with the waiting for the video game in my mind. Is that I don't think that it's immoral. You saw something that you wanted. You something that your friend had, I assume, and hey, you wanted that too. And I mean, is it just automatically better because it had to do with your faith, or are we going to put is that going to be the stipulation that you can covet greater faith, that you can covet greater relation with your personal God? Is that okay? Are you allowed to go and covet that way? That man's holier than me. I really want to get up to that level of holiness type thing. Like, is that necessarily bad coveting now in your mind?
Yeah, I think we're now not on topic and target anymore because I think there's only so much, John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there was only so much we could actually say and go with the topic at hand that you put out there, because initially I saw that too. We're going to share a few points. It may not even go 10, 15 minutes before we've exhausted it, and now we're, like what Sokka's saying, and what Lyrics is saying is that that's not really coveting. It's like, guys, there's nothing wrong with wanting the newest, latest, whatever you are passionate about that gives you joy, that is a hobby or it's fun. There's nothing wrong with that. The only thing wrong with that is if it belongs to your neighbor and you want to take it from your neighbor. Now that makes it covetous.
Right, and I couldn't agree more at that point in time. Like, that's where I'd stop, is at that point right there. Where
exactly. Like if you couldn't afford it or whatever and you just had to have it and you had to consume it upon yourself, that would be the covetous route. But yeah, if you could just wait, save up, or have the means to do it, it's perfectly fine. There's nothing immoral with that. God just smiles and says, "Have at it, guys. That's what that's what I put you on the planet for." It's like that's good stuff.
Yeah,
But I
I kind
mean,
of agree. Oh, go ahead. And then,
sorry, the last point I want to go with that though is that with the matter of immorality on this one now is that can we actually ever say it's immoral?
Yeah, if my neighbor has a really great female servant, and me and the wife want
He's immoral
that,
for owning somebody. Sorry, never mind.
what's that?
I said he's immoral for owning somebody. Never, but I was joking around.
Yeah, well, like a maid or a butler or somebody like that, and I wanted her, and I did anything and everything I could to get her, and to do it with immoral means. Then yes, it becomes immoral if I did it immorally to obtain her. You know what I'm saying?
Right, but that's the action. Where the commandments only refer to the thought.
True, and if the thought is, why would I want his and do stuff, in a wrong way to obtain her, like, hey, I'll give you twice the money, is that immoral? I don't know. Free market system, I don't know. I'm just using that as an example. Now, the wife, that's a different story. Hey, brother, I'll give you, X amount of dollars for your wife. Gladly pay you Tuesday for, I'm just kidding.
Again, we're moving into the territory of the action compared to just the thought.
It depends on how you view the thought. Like if you take the thought and you place it above your own needs or your own, we'll just say mental health. You allow that idea, that coveting, to affect your life, even though you don't act on it. You just sit in your house all day and think about your neighbor's wife constantly. Or you sit in your house all day and you think about, the next video game. When it affects your mental health, then I would think it would have a real problem. You can
and
covet
that goes
anything.
back, yeah.
But again, I guess what we'd have to clarify then, whether we can distinguish whether it's moral or immoral, is what is the definition of morality that we're going to be working with at this point in time. I mean, I'm a negative consequentialist. I don't see anything wrong with that, unless it starts to affect people around me. At that point in time, then you can judge an action. Because I mean, morality. My entire view with morality is morality has to exist between two people, essentially, at least as most basic frame, right? Is that that action, the moral actions, what we could distinguish between good and wrong moral actions, are based purely on the interactions that we have with each other. You having a thought is, how can you distinguish that as moral or immoral, unless like we're using a different understanding of what is moral or immoral.
Well, right away when
Maybe
you
it's
said
not a
that,
question of immorality. As far as maybe we could see the commandment as, it's not a commandment as far as you're breaking something of God's law, but in effect that it's for your own benefit. Like if we go back to the meaning of covet. Part of the meaning was that it was a selfish desire. Or if we go to back to the Buddhist, or the attachments, so it'd be like like I was saying earlier, like it'd be beneficial not to do this. Be beneficial for your own well-being, your own peace of mind, that you just don't go coveting and having like Lyrics was saying, this stuff is just on your mind constantly, because it's just going to take away your own peace. It's going to take you off focus. It's what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely, but that's not
Yeah.
again. I wouldn't put that in the category of morality at all. I just put that in, self-health.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
I would
But go ahead, Roy.
just real quick, John. I want to go
Go
back
ahead.
to what Sokka just said about anything immoral being between two people. And when he said that, as soon as he said that, I had the thought, okay, so what if you're stalking your neighbor's wife, and she doesn't know it, and no one knows it, but you're still stalking her? Is that still immoral?
Well, I guess from my definition, it would be no. There'd have to be an action. There'd have to be a choice there to go on that.
So what you're saying, Sokka, is she would have to be aware of it. The minute she becomes aware of it, it now becomes immoral.
It all
If
depends
she's
on
aware
what you
that
mean
he's
by
stalking her.
stalking. It depends on what you mean by stalking, Roy. Is stalking going up to the window and peeking in, or is it fantasizing in your house? You know, like there's an action that's associated with that. So.
Yeah.
Well, there is.
Well,
There is laws.
here's the thing too, is that let's say, and that's a good example, is that there's the potential involved as well. You spying on somebody, for example, like looking through a window, or that's invading their privacy there. Now, even if they're not aware of it, the potential of them being aware of it is there. The potential for that to turn into something that can take away their there's a potential there to diminish the happiness that person has. So I can put it on that category. That's immoral. Things that would be like that the person that you're acting against does not need to be fully aware of your actions for it to be immoral, I guess. But I think that only goes into the grounds where your actions have the potential to cause the things that can diminish well-being, happiness, or promote harm or suffering or whatever for that person. So that there's a huge difference between your routine's relatively the same. Get up in the morning, go leave the house, see the neighbor's wife, give her a wave and a smile. How are you doing today? Great. Go into your car and think about her on the way to work or whatever, compared to middle of the night, dressing in the black, sneaking into her house and stealing her underwear, or looking through her windows or something like that. There's one of them carries a much higher chance of potential of causing those negative effects onto the person.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. It's like, what do they call those? It's different than a peeper, or it's a different word. What do they call that? I forget. When you're
voyeur.
Yeah, but there's something. It's called something else. When you are voyeuring, like your neighbor's wife, and you're peeking into bathroom windows, bedroom windows, stuff like that. What do they call that again?
Invasion of privacy.
No, there's a term for that. It's
Peeping Tom.
Peeping Tom. There you go. That's what I was thinking.
Bam!
I kept thinking peeper, but it's Peeping Tom. There you go. So there are laws on the books for peeping Tomness, right? if I can say it that way. So if someone can prove that you were doing that, I mean, there's a law against that. That's basically stalking as well. And that's kind of sort of what I was thinking when I was saying stalking. So when you asked, I think it was you, Leonard, that asked, what do you mean by that? Yeah, if you're stalking someone because of sexual reasons, yeah, if it's against the law and then you can be proven to have been doing that, that's immoral. Because even though it's not an action, well, I don't know. I mean,
well, let's take this to the internet. All right, let's just say
Okay.
there's a database with every single account of your movements and every single page that you go to. Do you think it's almost like Time Cop, man? Where like thought crimes, where if you go to, let's say, just a pornography website, someone knows about that, and there's a record of it. Now, there's all these records of all these prior things that you've gone to that you probably aren't proud of, we'll just say. Nothing illegal or nothing like, just something that would probably go, that make you feel a little sinful or something like that. Now, do you think that, like, when I see this idea of all these different behaviors, which can pretty much be behaviors because we click on it, there's a reason for it, there's a reason why I would click on this particular website or this and this. Do you think that, like, the how coveting will be in the future will be different than how it is now, like viewed in law? So, like, say if someone can go back and view my internet history and see that all these things add up to this, even though I didn't have a particular real-life action that was involved in it, do you think that could maybe affect how human beings covet?
in a word, yeah. I mean, hadn't thought about it, but it's good to put it on the table, right? What do you guys think?
Do you think internet usage is almost a coveting, like, template or a coveting tool that we can use to help?
Yeah, it's definitely a mechanism where coveting can become much more real and much more, period.
Can definitely
Because
encourage your
our,
coveting and your
our
stalking if you
neighbor now
want.
becomes many more people, yes?
So do you think it's the idea of distance from said associated behavior that was the real deal? You know, like, so if I coveted my neighbor's wife, there was a certain amount of distance that's involved in the real life. You know what I mean? But when you're on the internet, it's kind of like you can almost do what you want, and as long as you're not caught, it doesn't really affect anyone. You know, but it's still you're coveting. You know, I think that the internet has had a large play in the idea of what coveting is, and we can see it because we go back to our browser history and we're reminded of it if it's interesting to us, you know.
When the Bible talks about neighbor, who's your neighbor, I don't think it has anything to do with geographic location, much like today it doesn't. So neighbor is anybody you really know. Like if I know you guys are my neighbors here on the internet, so to speak. I don't think geography has anything to do with the fact. It's like, can you covet someone else's wife that's not your neighbor? I mean, if I put it in those terms, then of course I'm going to be playing word games, and that's not what, you know, the commandments are intended to be. You guys follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I follow you.
Yeah, but it's and therein lies a huge issue for me is that these the fact is that the language on these is written in such a way that okay, if we want to take it at a complete literal sense, what does that actually mean? And this goes into the idea that if we're talking about this in the literal sense, that there's a thought crime to want to, you know, you'd have to think about it. You know, my neighbor's got a nice car. I want that car. Therefore, you know, you just committed a thought crime with no intentionality or not intentionality. Sorry, with no thought of actually committing the act itself, but merely one of just looking at something and desiring it. Is if you're to take a look at it, the text at its most basic form, that's what it seems to imply. But we all know that this is unrealistic. This is very unrealistic. So the only way that you know, we can actually take a look at this and say, okay, what does this really mean? It's like, well, okay, well, we have to take a look at, you know, is there intent in that thought? Was there intent of stealing something? But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's how I figured, is that there's an issue with the how vague these some of these commandments actually are.
Yeah, that's tough. I think John did a really good thing in coming up with this topic, because I don't think we can. I don't think anybody's got a real dog in this fight, so to speak, if you know what I mean. And so while we're passionate about what we believe, I, for one, and I'm only talking for me, I really don't know what I believe in the consumerism versus 10th commandment correlation. So it's minimal for me. So yeah, I don't know. John, did you have this in mind? Did you have a 10-minute discussion in mind, or a 10-hour one with this topic?
Oh no, well, I mean, I try to keep these hangouts on topics, 2 hours and under, so um, you know, but it's been an interesting discussion.
Sorry,
Um,
I'm bringing it all over the place, bro, Joe. I'm sorry.
it's okay, it's okay. And I just want to welcome Benny and St. Tommy to the room, and to the viewers out there, the Q&A is open if you have any questions, and also the link is in the event page if you want to join us.
Well,
Tommy,
actually, sorry, one more thing that I'd actually just like to bring up, though, is that what does the New Testament say about this, Roy? Because depending on how what interpretation you believe in, you're not under these laws anyway. That there'd have to be other laws out there.
Nate brought that point up. He brought that point up earlier, but then it reminded me of the scripture. I brought up. I think it was before you came into the room, about when Jesus was saying, even if you look at your neighbor's wife, you've committed adultery.
Yeah, that one.
Or
right. Yeah, so
yeah.
that one might be there still. Okay, fine. From New Testament, from what JC says, yeah, there's a neighbor wife thing there, but so all they've done there is reinforce the idea of the thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife thing. But apparently the house, the ox, and the ass is okay.
Well, Christ Jesus, when he gave the Sermon on the Mountain, he was talking to Jews who were under the law, and it was before the law was fulfilled. It was before the resurrection, and it was before Pentecost when God our Father started making us new critters at Pentecost. So those words that Jesus proclaimed were to Israel, people under the law. We're not under the law. We're under grace. And returning to the law is like a dog returning to its vomit. It's bad mental hygiene, bad to mix law and grace. It's still good not to steal your neighbor's lawnmower or, fertilize his wife. That's not good. But the law is fulfilled, and may we not. The law condemns. It's a ministry of death. It's this ain't Bible, but it's lemon sucking religion. You end up condemning people. You end up condemning yourself. May we not return to that juvenile thinking of the law.
Amen.
Amen. Praise God.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to the, like we were talking earlier about the attention of the heart. And I think, some of these commandments or sayings are beneficial in the way of just checking your heart, checking your intentions, checking your desires.
Well, ultimately, is it a standard that you can live up to in your day-to-day basis in reality?
Love is the standard. Whatever's loving is good.
Yes, I can honestly say I have not coveted since becoming a Christian. I don't think I did it before I was a Christian. It was just something that our parents instilled in us. It's just, for me, it was just common sense. It's theirs.
Again, what do you mean by covet? Sorry, it's like you haven't coveted
like when I was a kid. Like when I was a kid.
Anything in general.
When I was a kid and my friends would have toys that I didn't have, did I covet them? No. Did I want to have something like theirs? Probably. But I didn't want theirs, and I wasn't going to beat them over the head for it. You know what I'm saying? That's the coveting part. It's like, man, I wish I had that toy of my neighbors. You understand what I'm saying? That's the covet part. It's immoral to want something that is owned by somebody else that you can't have. That's the whole coveting part.
Really, even as a child, you didn't have any of those thoughts? I thought it was pretty natural that a kid wanted to have another kid's toy.
Yeah, I did.
No, I was taught better than that. Sorry, I don't. That doesn't. That's not going to come out right if you heard it incorrectly. It's like, see, I believe that your parents set the tone for what you do, and what you do is what you think, and what you think is what you believe. So if you believe correctly, then you're not going to covet. It's just that's why the Lord says, love me. Love people as you love yourself, and you've got all these laws fulfilled, including the coveting law. Because coveting is a law. Thou shalt not covet.
Well, thank God the law is fulfilled, and I don't have to love everybody. And I don't even have to love God. I don't have to figure him out. I don't have to act loving. I don't have to act mature. It's good. It's good to depart from youthful things, stupid things, but I ain't got to. All things are permissible, but not all things are good for the building up of the called. May we not lay the law on ourselves as we grow in grace. A bunch of rules that are obsolete. It is the good is still good. It's still good to love each other. But the thou shalt part, may we flush that. Reckon yourself dead to the law and dead to sin and alive in Christ Jesus when you feel like it. It's not a requirement. If you're comfortable with the law, go for it. It is not suggested, though, by St. Paul, the former apostle. It's not suggested to go back to the law. When we were boys, we thought like boys. We spoke like boys. We acted like boys, but we ain't boys no more. That is all.
Amen. Hey, Cider, how you doing? Welcome to the room.
Hey, man.
Any thoughts, Cider?
I'm
Help
mostly
us.
I'm mostly thinking about how much I like Pringles at the minute, so I'm just going to finish this and then I'll come in.
Okay.
So give me 5 minutes. That
All
is.
right.
They look good. Did you bring enough for everybody?
No, these are mine.
Mine.
Don't covet them.
Like chips.
Wait, I'm coveting.
Hey, I'm not done.
Thou
Look,
shalt not cover thy neighbor's Pringles.
I am coveting thy stuff.
I want Lyric's burrito.
So I'm gonna go get my own stuff. I'm hungry.
There you go. Lyrics, you wanted to say something?
It's the basis of consumerism right there, man. Without that, we're just not going to operate. We're not going to sell any Pringles.
Speak for yourself. I'll sell you a can.
Hey, it's Doritos, guys. Come on, Doritos, right?
Who could disagree with that?
Who could? My wife's favorite commercial. Every time the Super Bowl comes around, she's going like, "Wonder what Doritos is going to do this year."
Yeah, man.
Well, anyway, yeah, well, we're about an hour and a half into this, and I guess I'm gonna close the room up here. And yeah, I thought it was, unless I'll just, well, first, anybody have any closing thoughts? Anything before I close the live portion?
I think that any rules based on thought crimes are stupid.
Amen.
Yeah, that was
I
going to
would
kind of
say
be my.
if you have- I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was kind of my point that I was going to raise.
And I would my last thought would be if you wrestle with covetousness, don't come live next to me. And I'm teasing.
Roy get his gun.
I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
Well, Roy, you think kleptomania is one of the symptoms of covetous?
You know, a coin flip on that one. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if it's a disease or a disorder. I don't know. So I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. That's a good question though.
Well, guys, thanks for being part of this conversation, and I thought it was a pretty good one. I hope you enjoyed yourselves as well, and the door was a little bit different, and it went pretty. Everybody was pretty friendly. It's nice to, and so thanks again for joining, and everyone out there, thanks for listening. This has been another episode of God Talk, and we'll just we'll continue off air. Link is in the event page again. And we'll see you soon. Thanks for everybody for being a part.